Hello everybody, Mike here. Welcome to a very special treat here on EOH TV. I'm about to be joined by three very exciting guests on this Zoom call. I'm hoping that nothing weird or creepy happens. There is some sort of light moving behind me right now. I'm hoping that doesn't mean anything, because I'm about to be joined by the three people who created the horror sensation of the year, and it seems to have already become the most talked about film of 2020, and that is Host. Host dropped on Shudder just last week, and a lot of people are already saying it's not only the scariest film of the year, a couple of people, including Dread Central, have actually called it the scariest film of the decade. This is a film that was conceived and written and shot and produced and edited all during lockdown, and the whole film takes place on Zoom. I watched this film a few nights ago and it really did scare the shit out of me. It's a truly frightening and impressive film, so I would urge all of you guys to go out there and check it out. I'm about to talk to the three people who created this film and made it happen. Just so you know, this interview will be completely spoiler-free. We won't give away any plot details or spoil the fun. So joining me on this hopefully not haunted Zoom call, I've got with me the three people who created Host and made it happen. So please welcome writer Gemma Hurley, writer Jed Shepherd, and writer-director Rob Savage. Hello, guys.
Hey Mike, how are you?
I am very good. How are you guys?
Yeah, very good. Yeah, it's hard to process.
Yeah,
really.
It sounds as though it's been a completely crazy week for you guys. So the film came out just a few nights ago, and the reaction has been unbelievable. Rob, what's it been like for you just these last few days?
It's very surreal. I mean, it feels like, in a way, it doesn't even feel like we made a movie because we didn't go anywhere. We just stayed on our sofas and we recorded via Zoom, and it was all with our friends. And it's even weirder to release a film without it playing in cinemas and just have people suddenly be tweeting at us about this thing that we've been working on in the last 12 weeks. It's every so often, you know, especially when you get a kind of fun reaction video of somebody shitting their pants while watching it, you realise that, oh, actually lots of real people are watching this silly thing that we made. But it all feels a little unreal still.
I can imagine. So first of all, just set the scene for me. Now, you don't have to spoil too much, but for anyone out there who hasn't seen it, Jem, just give us a little breakdown of what people could expect from Host.
Was that Jem or Jed?
No, Jem. I want to hear you. I want to hear you, Jem.
It was Jem. Although that's going to get very confusing, isn't it?
Oh my god! And there's a Gemma in the film. There's an Emma in the film. It's
Nightmare.
What to expect from Host? I mean, from my perspective, this all started when Jed and Rob did this whole prank video. I don't know if everyone's seen that as well, but that was kind of where the whole premise came from, where they were doing a Zoom call and they were a bit bored in lockdown, and they were just like, oh, there's noises in my attic, right? So I think he went up there into the attic and did this whole prank on them, and everyone shat their pants. And then it's brilliant. That's such an amazing idea for a film. And I think it kind of all started from there. And the film is essentially just a spiritual successor to that idea of a bunch of friends.
Nice pun there.
Yeah. Oh, hey.
Nice.
They a bunch of friends bored in lockdown. They over the kind of banana bread phase or whatever quizzes. It's let's chat to some ghosts and nothing bad will happen. And of course, it's a horror film, so
yeah, shit goes down. Yeah.
What was that? Amy, was that you?
I heard it. I heard something.
I think there's something here. Do you see that?
So as Jem was saying, we have this WhatsApp group called the Quarantine Movie Club, where from the start of lockdown, we were just watching movies every day, like everyone else on Netflix party. We were doing pub quizzes every week. The Filmageddon quiz, which is great. And then it just kind of naturally transgressed into a horror movie after Rob's prank. It went viral. We put it online. It went viral. I think it was seen by approximately about 6 million people across all of the platforms it's on. Amazing. And so he was like, do you have any ideas for how we make this into a big thing? So I was like, I'll sleep on it. And about 3 a.m, I texted him 2 words: Zoom seance. And then I went to sleep. And I woke up and Rob had pretty much done the skeleton of what we were going to do. So yeah, and then we drafted Gemma in because she's skillful and she knows horror, and We needed someone to add a little bit of heart to our craziness.
It's like Captain Planet.
I love it. So, Rob, were you worried? I mean, there's been a lot of talk, hasn't there, since the lockdown occurred? You know, I personally have been waiting for those kind of pandemic horror films to start being churned out. Were you kind of keen to get in there before anyone else? Because it did feel like at some point this was inevitable. Like somebody was going to make some kind of lockdown horror movie, right?
Well, that was part of it. I mean, I think doing the prank really solidified it. But I think at the start of lockdown, everyone was kind of sarcastically saying, oh, well, who's going to be the first person to make a movie entirely on Zoom?
Yeah.
And then nobody had done it a couple of months in, and we were like, oh, well, why don't we just do it? It really was as simple as that like nobody had really taken advantage of it, and we didn't think anyone, we thought there was a good movie to be made there, and we thought that all the kind of little bits and pieces we'd seen hadn't quite capitalized on what's so kind of paranoia-inducing and creepy naturally about spending your life on, you know, these kind of video conferencing platforms, you know, and we thought that if we could tap into that, and we could really make people terrified on their next Zoom call, then we'd have done something worthwhile. And to be honest, like we were just sitting around playing video games anyway. So like, what's the worst thing that could happen? We'll make a movie, and if it sucks, we'll, you know, lockdown will end and we'll be able to go back to our day jobs.
Yeah, it's something to do, isn't it?
That's the thing. We had no idea that how people relate to it, because when it was announced a few weeks ago that we were doing a movie based solely on Zoom, I looked at the comments on like Bloody Disgusting and Dread Central, just from random people, and they were like, I'm not going to watch a Zoom movie. There's no way I'm going to watch a Zoom movie. And then now it's changed a little bit. It's and I don't know if you've seen, but Dread Central has said this is the scariest movie of the decade, which is
unbelievable,
incredible.
Isn't it? Absolutely unbelievable. We'll come to this in a minute. Let me ask you about how you approach writing this then, because it's an odd mix here. You've made the film with your friends. You've got actors kind of playing, it seems to be themselves in a way. I just wondered how scripted this was. Gem, let me come to you and ask you about this. How did you approach writing the script for these characters?
Well, I mean, this is such an interesting question, because I think Rob and Jed will probably agree with me. It's quite an unusual process of development this whole went through. Like, obviously, I just need to point out that I've never actually met Jed in my life. Like, this is the craziness of lockdown. I've met Rob. I've met you once a year ago in real life, and we've all
just you. I never knew that. Okay.
It's just this, like, but this is the wonder of lockdown, like where this kind of thing can happen. But you guys do know the actresses so well. You're friends with them. You've had, like, you know, you've made films together. You had that kind of trust built up with them, you know, in this kind of dynamic, which you could then, you know, throw all your Hitchcock like stunts at them and terrorize them later. But we'll get to that.
Wow.
Yeah. But I mean, in terms of like the development, like you already had the premise of like, you know, this is going to be a seance. You had like 5 like wonderful, you know, your cast. So I guess it was just trying to figure out what is the dynamic of this friendship? What is the tension that they're going to be, not just in terms of like this poltergeist, but their kind of relationship dynamic between these girls. And we don't need to know, you know, these like backstories of who these people are, because, you know, this is our movie, but we want to like feel for these people, you know, and you can see that in their friendship on screen. I hope that really comes across, like how charming and like how much they really do love each other. And
yeah,
we did so like, you know, none of this was particularly scripted in terms of like, you know, natural dialogue or anything like that. The cast really did like most of the improvisation. We just kind of like figured out the dynamic, figured out like a kind of structure to hang it all off, like those story beats for them to hit.
Mm-hmm.
But also the funnest thing about this whole thing was we did a kind of research thing where we did a seance with them to see how they would really react in a real seance. We got like a real, amazing. I think, did you know the medium, Rob, this lady you brought in? Was she something?
Yeah. So I'd done a TV movie a few years ago for Channel 4, which was all about, it was based on a you know, true haunting that happened back in the 90s. And as part of my research for that, I had to go and meet the real people. And one of the characters was a medium. And as part of my research, I actually started going to a few of their seances, and I joined a spiritualist church for a little bit, and we ended up doing these weekly seances in a town hall in Hounslow every Wednesday night, and it struck me how different a real seance is compared to what you normally see on screen. And that was something as soon as Jed had this idea about doing the seance online, I was like, okay, great, but let's not do the movie seance, let's do a real seance with really, relatable medium character who's not who's not your usual kind of cliche. And I've forgotten the question, but
it's a good answer. It's really interesting as well. Rob, are you in any way a believer, or are you superstitious about any of this stuff? And were you ever worried about dabbling in any of it for the sake of this film?
No, I've never worried about dabbling in it. I think I'm not a believer until it's 3 a.m. and there's a sound in my house, and then it's I mean, there was, the seance we did actually, like a lot of what's in the first half of the movie actually happened in the seance for real. Gemma, the actress Gemma, a big kind of like Lord of the Rings size book like came off her shelf during the seance. Oh my God. Unprompted.
We've recorded it. We have it on record.
Yeah, we recorded it as well, and hopefully that'll get out at some point. But one of the things you have to do is when you're doing a virtual seance is you all have to call out, hello, this is a welcome space. Is there anyone there? So Gemma calls out, and immediately on the end of her calling out, this book goes onto the floor. She jumps up, she starts crying, she starts freaking out. Very similar to what happens in the movie. And I was kind of there in the same. I was kind of there to see how they would react, and I was expecting them to freak out. And I called out and I said, "Is there anyone there?" And suddenly my cupboard door just went and slammed.
Amazing.
And at that moment, it stopped being kind of my experience was stopped being academic and became very visceral. But apart from that. No, I'm not too worried by all the meddling we've been doing.
I love it. So Jed, these characters, they are, their character names are their names, and they are a bunch of existing friends. Like you said, they've got that kind of chemistry. How much are they just playing themselves in this?
So yeah, this is actually very important. So we kind of took a leaf out of the Blair Witch Project book where they use their real names, and that added to the authenticity of it. Yeah. And I think the fact that within the film they're calling each other by their real names like they do every single day, it helped them kind of be themselves rather than be a character, which you can see on screen. It's so palpable. They are pretty much exactly like the characters you see on screen. The reason why it's great that Gemma is involved is because me and Rob are so close to them. It's hard for us to kind of see them at a distance or to kind of see any potential flaws or like ways we could exploit their personality traits. Or like just like things in the group dynamic, like who gets on best with who. But Gemma could see that with fresh eyes. So that's the beauty of that.
I love it. Jed, you mentioned the Blair Witch Project. I mean, were there any particular kind of cinematic references, any kind of horror points of reference for you guys when you were sort of creating this?
Yeah, well, I think we wear our influences quite literally on our sleeve sometimes. And obviously the Blair Witch is the found footage movie. Yeah. So you do see some Blair Witch influences in not only on the kind of using their real names, but with specific imagery that you see on screen. Maybe the Emma kind of thing within her blankets. You see a kind of a Blair Witch reference there. But there's tons and tons of like our favorite film references in there. I'm a massive fan of Night of the Comet, and Rob snuck, my favorite movie, and Rob snuck a Night of the Comet reference in there without telling me. And he's like, Jed, did you see it? And it took me 3 goes till I saw it, and it's awesome. It makes the film even better for me.
This is a question I had for you guys, actually. Like, I've heard since that you put loads of Easter eggs in the film that I don't know about. Like, how many are there?
Well, if you watch the movie in the first 5 minutes, you can tell how every single character is going to die. That was something I was very keen on. That there's a clue as to how they all die in the first 5 minutes. There's one thing that I thought was really clever, but nobody's spotted. So maybe it was too
clever.
maybe it just sucked. But there's a moment where with Gemma at the start, which foreshadows what's going to happen. as well, which I'm really keen for people to spot. And then there's lots of little, like we were really inspired by Haunting of Hill House, the Mike Flanagan show, and how he dresses all these hidden ghosts into the frame and makes you really search around. And there's lots of little hidden scares.
There's so much going on in the background, so much. Another big influence is the Zoom background that I have right here. I don't know if you can see what it's from, Mike.
Up down, Jed. Up down.
It's from Ghostwatch.
It's Ghost. Oh my God, it's pipes.
It's pipes. Yeah.
It's pipes. Yes. Oh, I love it. That's scary.
It's really scary, and for my money, that's the best British found footage kind of piece of media ever. And you can, once you know that, you can see that influence in it as well. With the specific camera moves and things like that.
I mean, me and Jed have been speaking about this for years, about whether you could do a modern day Ghost Watch, and we just thought you probably you can't, because people are so kind of guarded to that stuff now. You'd have to really sneak it in somewhere they weren't expecting it. People are quite as gullible. I don't think we read media in that same way. But
Twitter exists.
And Twitter exists, so it'd be rude anyway. But the interesting thing is, like, the thing that I'm really happy about is when people say, I forgot that this wasn't a Zoom call I was on. When the pop-up window comes up, people have said, they moved their mouse to try and get rid of it, and they feel like they're a participant on the call. And it feels like this is almost scratched that itch. It feels like this is as close as we're going to get to making our Ghost Watch.
I was on a podcast with Stephen Falk, the writer of Ghost Watch, a couple of years back, and I said to him, "Do you think there'll ever be another Ghost Watch?" And he was like, "Oh, maybe you'll make it." So
and you have.
I'm going to pull that clip and put it online.
Yes. That's brilliant. Rob, how were you able to make? I mean, was it ever a worry to you about making Zoom cinematic and making Zoom scary?
No, it probably should have been. I really love found footage. I mean, I think, like Jed was saying, there was a bit of a backlash when it got announced, and I think there's a bit of a backlash to found footage anyway. But the cold hard fact of it is, found footage is creepy. It just naturally is.
It always is.
It naturally grounds itself in a sense of reality. And I think the thing that you're always striving for as a horror director is you're always trying to make something that people are going to take home with them. And the fact is, we're all at home at the moment. We're all using Zoom. This is a part of our lives. Like, a lot of the hard work was already done for me in that regard. And I think, I think in a way, the way that our eyes read a Zoom screen keeps us very active. And it actually means that, even though it's 6 static shots, your eyes are constantly searching between them for some information, for where the danger is coming from, and it's a very active viewing experience. So I think actually it got me more excited about what you could do and how you could play within that format.
So just how did it work logistically? So obviously you've got your 5 actors that are talking on Zoom. How were you directing them, Rob? How did it work? Did you let it kind of run for as long as it could, kind of in real time, until you had to make cuts and stuff? Or sort of was it a bit more conventional in the way that you sort of set up shots, etc.? How did it work?
Sort of. So we had everyone, for a lot of the group stuff, and the first thing we did is we filmed all of the scares and the set pieces first, so that we filmed those individually with the actors, without the other actors having knowledge of what was going to happen. And then what I would do is I would play those scares back, and they genuinely react to them in real time. I think I was talking about this before, that they didn't know when people were going to die, and they didn't know how they were going to die, and that was really important. And then when I got to the group stuff, what I would do is, we'd have maybe a couple of sentences in the outline, so we knew we had to get from A to B to C, and then I'd start by talking it through with the actors. They'd suggest things, I'd suggest things, and then I'd do the first take, and I'd run a really long, messy, sprawling, 20-minute take, where some things would work, a lot of stuff wouldn't work, and then we'd have a little debrief after that. This worked, this didn't work. They'd make some notes, I'd make some notes. So we were almost after, we'd do 3-4 takes, I think, before we ended up at something that felt like that had the shape of what's in the movie. So it was almost like me and the actors were kind of getting to a point where we had almost a conventional script for the scene after doing a few takes of it, and that's what we then keep going back to. And we did a lot of takes. We did a lot of takes on this because on a normal movie, most of the time is spent setting up the lights, setting up camera, and so little time is spent shooting. Whereas on this, we were shooting almost constantly, so we were able to do 10 takes of something until we found the right shape for the movie.
Nice. So I don't want to spoil too much, but obviously towards the end, you do have some practical effects, you have some visual effects, you've got makeup effects on this, you've got you can actually, a good friend of mine, Dan Martin, I believe, did some of the effects for you, didn't he, on this?
Dan Martin is an absolute legend.
Yeah, he's a genius. He's a genius.
Punch, and he did probably a first on this. He sent over the prosthetics with a little tutorial video, and then he sat on a Zoom call with Caroline while she applied the lacerated wound onto her face.
Okay, because that's what I was going to ask. Like, how were you able to achieve all that stuff remotely without actually working with other human beings? So it was all kind of tutorial back and forth.
It was literally Caroline would have the bit, and she'd say there, and he'd say no, up a bit, smooth out the edges, and we'd just talk her through. And Dan's very good and very patient, and Caroline did a great job.
So actually, your actors are now actors, cinematographers, makeup artists. They've done all of it. They've been lighting, the lot.
And stunts, and they're totally. But yeah, you could hire them and do away with all the rest of the crew you need on a film. They could do it all now.
Yeah. So how have you guys found? I mean, I watched this film 3-4 nights ago. It scared the shit out of me, to be perfectly honest. And I consider myself quite a jaded horror fan. I've seen a lot of horror films. It really, really freaked me out. And it sounds as though from everyone else's reaction on social media that it's really affecting everyone in such a positive way, which is wonderful. Rob, did you have any idea of kind of how frightening this film was when you were putting it together? Because you must have been so in it that it must have been kind of hard to tell, I guess.
That's been the most surprising thing, is that people have been finding it so scary. The thing we set out to do is make a film that was like a fun roller coaster ride that would take the minds off things for an hour. And I obviously you intend it to be scary, but it's so hard to know if it has that kind of accumulative effect of building dread. The thing that those are the responses that have really kind of blown us away. People who say that from minute one they start to feel this mounting tension, and there's no roadmap to making that movie. It's either in the DNA of what you've shot or it's not, and I don't know kind of where it came from. Everyone was trying to make a scary movie, but there's so many moving parts. You never really know until you show it to someone. And I showed it to my girlfriend before we had the mix on it, before we had some of the final effects, and she made me run out to the shop, buy sage and burn sage, which is meant to shoo away bad spirits around the house.
I love it.
She was so scared, and at that moment I was like, oh, okay, maybe there's something there.
I love that. That's just wonderful, isn't it? And like you say, Jed, people have been saying scariest film of the decade. I would consider this probably I think this will go down and be remembered as the horror film of 2020, not just because it's so good and so frightening, but also because of what it's about and how it was made. Again, I guess, like, what an incredible few days you must have had. It must be quite overwhelming.
The battery on my phone is literally fried from like the mentions, and it's crazy. Yeah, I mean, when I watched that first draft, essentially, that they sent me, I knew it was something special. You never know because I'm such like a big horror fan. I'm very, very, very critical about horror films, especially the ones that we make together. So it was, the sigh of relief was just big, and if it works for me, then I knew it would work for the horror community at large. But I still did not expect just the overwhelming response from everyone, and not just from horror fans as well. It's just from people who don't normally watch horror. That's the thing that I've loved the most, really. People who said they haven't watched a horror film for like 10 years, and all of a sudden because of the kind of hype, they watched Host, and it's kind of blown them away.
Do you know what annoys me though? Because everyone has been positive about it unanimously, but some of the broadsheets, like The Guardian, that they gave it 3 stars, but they essentially said nothing negative about it. They're like, this film is pretty much perfect, and yet 3 stars. I was like, there's still that snobbery.
That same journalist is on Letterboxd as well, and he gave it 4 stars on Letterboxd. Which is very interesting.
Well, and also The Guardian gave Chernobyl 3 stars, so
Yeah, what a thing. Exactly.
I have friends who work there as well, so that's a little bit of a stab in the back.
Me too, actually. But I still think they need to know. Like why are they so scared to give a Zoom horror film 5 stars? They're going to regret that in a few years' time, I think.
You're right. I do think you're right. There's a bit of a kind of sense of snobbery towards genre movies, especially in the UK. I think there's just a kind of aversion to taking them seriously, and also seeing the kind of craft and work that goes into making something that is just scary and fun as well. I think there's a real, a filmmaker that we all love is James Wan, and I just think he's a modern master. The things that he does are so incredibly hard to pull off, and to pull off with such kind of style as he does. But I still think there's a kind of snobbery in the way that people talk about movies like the Conjuring movies, that are these kind of roller coaster horror films.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, there's a real craft to them, and I don't think it gets appreciated.
But I've got to say that I find your film scarier than what most of James Wan does, to be honest, and genuinely,
very much.
And that's because James Wan is wonderful at staging a jump scare, but he doesn't always create quite that sense of unease that your film does. And what I found most effective about your film is it's that first half hour. It's the looking at what's going on in the background and freaking out and thinking something is going to happen at any moment, even when it's not, is a wonderful thing to pull off.
Mike, is
congrats.
that okay if we put on the poster that he said they're better than James Wan?
100%. Please do.
It's out there. The genie's out of the bottle.
Yeah, that's on the record. That's fine. Yeah. I also want to give a shout out to my lovely friend who's an actor, James Swanton, who also does he not have one of the scariest faces? I mean, he's always terrifying in everything he does.
Ouch.
No, he's so wonderful, but he always gets to play these incredibly creepy characters, and he does it so well.
He does. He was also in our film Salt. He played the demon in Salt.
Yes.
With Alice Lowe. So yeah, we've kind of typecast him, but I would love him to be in a rom-com. I think it would be great if we did a rom-com one day and it's James Swanton was the lead.
He could also be like the next Hugh Grant, 100%, couldn't he?
Totally.
Yeah. So charming. Yeah.
That's the weird thing. It's like he's on Salt he was dressed as this kind of ancient, demonic spirit, and then you cut the take and he'd suddenly like stand up straight and be very dapper and polite and go to the craft table and have a chat with you.
I love it.
His body acting is like Andy Serkis level of just brilliance, I think.
And his voice as well is absolutely, as a podcaster, it's such a treat to have him on my podcast because his voice is like chocolate gold. It's absolutely unbelievable. Yeah. So just making up for the fact that I said he's got a scary face by paying him a compliment.
Digging the hole.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, guys, thank you so much. My final question for each of you, because I ask all my guests on the podcast this: what's your favorite horror movie? Rob, let's start with you. Favorite horror movie?
Well, it is Evil Dead 2, but I want to shout out a movie called The Innocents, which I think might be the greatest movie ever made, let alone a horror movie. I think it's one of those movies where you go and watch it, and it's from the 1960s. It's black and white. And you put it on and you think, oh, well, okay, this is going to feel a little like homework. This isn't going to live up to kind of modern day pacing. It's not going to be as scary. And it just fucking is. It's absolutely terrifying.
It really is.
The control that Jack Clayton, the director, has over the frame, the scares, the build up. It's, like you said, it's one of those films where from the very first frame, you just feel that tension growing and you feel your shoulders start to tense. And I watch it at least once a year, and every time I watch it, there's something new I pick up on. It's one of the richest horror movies ever made.
It really is. Even when I saw it on the big screen at the BFI once, and and it starts in pitch black, and you just hear the little girl singing.
So good.
Oh my God,
good.
Absolutely amazing. And they blacked out the whole cinema, even the fire exit signs, I believe, when it was played there, and it was absolutely incredible. Yeah.
Long live the BFI.
I know. Jed, what about you?
Well, it's not a hard one. My favorite horror movie of all time, is the 1984 film Night of the Comet.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, starring Kelly Maroney and Catherine Mary Stewart. And for those that don't know, it's about two essentially valley girls in LA, and a comet passes over Earth, kills everyone, turns them to dust, and all that's left are some zombies. And these two girls mostly kind of stay away from the zombies and just loot malls and just dance around to girls just want to have fun and just do sisterly things, bicker, shoot machine guns. And it's kind of the precursor for Buffy as well. And Kelly Maroney's character is essentially Buffy Summers. And I try my best to kind of be a standard bearer for Night of the Comet every interview or thing I ever do. And myself and Rob are now friends with both of them, the lead two ladies, which is really cool. We got to hang out with them. I was friends with Kelly Maroney, and we were in LA, and she was like, "Oh, let's go for a drink." So I was like, "Cool." We went for a drink, and she brought Catherine Mary Stewart with her as a surprise, and I was blown away because it's like if your favorite movie is Titanic and like they say Kate Winslet shows up or something. But yeah, Night of the Comet. Check it out, guys.
Excellent choice. Gem, what about you?
I mean, I wish I'd said The Innocents, man. I can't wait for the Haunting of Hill House sequel to. That would be awesome. I'll say a short film actually. Has anyone seen The Signal Man?
Oh
yes,
the Charles Dickens
wonderful
film from the BBC.
Wonderful.
It's so good. It's just like, I don't know what it is, existential dread, existential horror, just this sense of, oh God, there's awful things happening and I don't understand it in this like creepy railway tunnel. But I'll say no more. That's my pick.
I love it. Truly terrifying. Thank you guys. Thank you so much for doing this. And just shout out like one more time, where can people find Host, and can they find it kind of wherever they are right now?
Well, right now it's in Canada, the US, and the UK on Shudder. We're working on expanding to all the other territories where it's not been released. And please let us know if you've enjoyed it, and don't say anything if you haven't.
Send us reaction videos.
We want reaction videos. Please.
Show it to your parents. Show it to your jumpy partner. Film them the whole time. Send it to us. We live for that thing.
Looking for more horror content? Subscribe now for more videos like this one, and listen to the Evolution of Horror podcast. Head on over to evolutionofhorror.com.